Agenda additions and approval. Are there any agenda additions from our board? Any from staff?
From staff, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
I'll move the agenda.
As presented. Okay, thank you. All those in favor? Thank you, gentlemen. December 18th meetings or meeting minutes. Where are we? Anybody have any questions, concerns? Mr. Clark?
I'll give you approval.
Okay, one up.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I believe it's on the list of attendees. It's Kevin Heimstra, not Ken.
He signed in on the front as Ken, which is
Okay, where are we at on that one?
Right on page.
Yes, it is. You're right. It is Kevin Heemstra. I do know that. So we will make those changes and then duly noted. Any issues, concerns with the one change? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay. Business rising from the minutes? None. We're going to do a quick introduction. Mr. Teal, I'm going to throw it to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'd like to introduce our newest development officer, Carly Davidson, who's here to observe today. Carly joined us beginning of October. She's still learning the ropes on being a development officer. Eventually, she'll get to the point where she has to come in and do some presentations, but we'll get there eventually. But we wanted to take this opportunity to say hello. So we have you probably may have crossed her in the halls if you're roaming in through the building in the last several months. Carly hails from the county of Stettler and has training in the background in the environmental studies, environmental fields. And I look forward to her contributing with Rich and myself and helping process development permits and dealing with the inquiries in the department.
Awesome. Well,
She does speak. I should give her a chance to say a little bit about herself as well. So,
welcome, Carly. What would you like to tell us about yourself?
Hi.
How long have you lived in Stettler? How many kids you got?
Okay. Yeah. I have one son, actually, a year and a half old.
Oh, right on. Okay. And whereabouts in Stettler do you live?
Southwest of Erskine.
South and west of Erskine.
You couldn't
Oh.
say. Better word than
Oh, boy. You're in the best ward in all of Stettler County. There you go. Right on. Okay. Any questions for Carly, gentlemen? Well, welcome aboard, and we look forward to hearing more from you. Excellent. Thank you. Okay. Development permits. There is none, correct?
there are none for MPC to consider.
Subdivision file, we have one. Who's taking this?
It'll be me, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Andrew, can you make sure we have the GIS ready to go?
Yeah, it is ready to go.
So maybe we'll just jump to the drawing on page 16, Mr. Chair. This application is for a first parcel out of an unsubdivided quarter section. We're up in the area kind of between the lake to the west and Highway 56 to the east. And maybe just have the, oh, that right, we don't have the full picture. And the farmstead is located in the very upper northwest corner of the quarter section. The quarter section itself is split by Range Road 20-1A, which was put through on a road plan many, many years ago. So the property owner for the portion that kind of runs, I was going to say north-south, but it's more like northwest, southeast, through the quarter section owns the property on both sides. And that's going to come up as a topic a little later on. The parcel is for about 24 acres, and that's a function of the road plan, the placement of the buildings where the farmstead is located, and about a 9-acre, this far is wetland that you can see on the photo. And it does isolate some of the land. Basically, it's trapped, isolated from the rest of the quarter section, farmable area to the north of the farmstead buildings in the wetland. So that's why the size is somewhat larger than what we're used to seeing for first parcel outs. So nonetheless, staff looked at the MDP policies to say that our preferences is for as small as possible, but we can consider one-off cases like this when there's some good circumstances for doing so. And I think largely the isolated portion that's way up in that very northeast corner is really what's adding to the acreage, in addition to the desire to get to the immediate area that's kind of pasture land on the west side of the wetland, and then deciding which parcel the wetland is going to be part of. On the other drawing, you'll see the influence of the setback from the open discharge, and it's well away from any of the property lines, which is largely across the south. that is really being created as part of the subdivision application. So the recommendation is for approval of that larger 24 plus or minus acre parcel. In looking at the Rural Development Fund contributions, we did some measurements around the actual area items that would qualify as part of the farmstead. So the driveways, the house, the immediate paddocks in the area, that only added up to around 6.5 acres of land. Take advantage of the full 10 acres because they're a little bit more compact. Staff are also recommending that given the purpose of the Rural Development Fund is to make you think about agricultural land, that the 9.2 acre wetland should not be an item that the Rural Development Fund charge is applied to. Nonetheless, it still leaves about a little over 9 acres that would be subject to the Rural Development Fund contribution. So around $9,200 of contribution is the staff recommendation on this. The other issue that came up in the review of this application, and maybe we can switch to the GIS for this, Andrew, and bring that up on the screen, is the road plan that you can see. Can you zoom in a little bit there? Yeah, there it is. Shows up in the blue lines when we don't have it highlighted. So that was put in many years ago, and the tan line that you see on the air photo, that's the actual road surface itself. And ordinarily, we like to see that tan line kind of centered within, at the time when this road plan was created, our standard was a 20-meter wide right of way, which is the usual road allowance. So we're looking at the issue of moving up to our desired 30, but we also have an issue that the road doesn't sit nicely in the existing road allowance. So we have some offsets and issues to deal with. And you can see on some cases, especially where it does that angle past the cultivated field kind of in the middle, just to the right side of the large wetland I was talking about. The road hugs the blue line, the outer edge, pretty darn close to the point that it's pretty flat up there. There's not really a well-defined ditch. So subdivision is the opportunity where we get land for road dedication, and we've moved more and more to a system of using road acquisition agreements. But in this particular case, staff are recommending that we take the opportunity to correct this issue. And I should talk about the same issue along with the south boundary as well. And to get the actual land as the road dedication, recognizing though that county is the one that put the road plan through to begin with. We kind of missed the center line. Administration is recommending that the county pick up the survey costs for getting this corrected. And we do have funds set aside in the budget to correct these items when they come to our attention, the opportunity. For the east-west portion of the very south end of the quarter section, maybe we could just zoom in a little bit on that, Andrew. We leave the road allowance in 2 locations. So this is our opportunity to kind of correct that as well. And
Stop you here for a second, okay? Now, we are dealing, we constantly on a regular basis are dealing with the fact that every time we talk about this, the fence that's close in a urban area doesn't always, are we 100% sure that that's the case with this? Or are we just estimating off where our lines are? Because the lines on the map don't always correlate, correct?
So we can easily get that. What you like to use, like a 10-foot, I like to use at least a 1 meter.
I say plus or minus 3 meters.
Yeah.
In either case, it's enough for us to indicate, but I think maybe we'll come back and look at the terms of the condition, which is basically, if you've had a chance to read them, the conditions seem a little instructive because it's me trying to give instructions to the surveyor on how to go fix this issue. So actually maybe we'll turn it, but here, yes, I think when you see that width is easy, like 6 meters off cutting the corner, and just by the curve versus a 90-degree elbow, I'm pretty confident in saying that's probably what we're going to find in the real world.
And then on the lower part of the screen where the road allowance is there, it looks like at the right side we're off our own road allowance there too, right?
It is, and if you look at the quarter section to the immediate east, we have some issues there too.
And they're on, okay.
But at this point, that quarter section is not before us for subdivision, so we'll look at correcting this one.
At another time, okay.
One would need a different process. Either we're going out to proactively correct it, or we wait for them to come subdivide one day, much like this applicant.
It doesn't look like it's causing a problem. The area is treed right along it, so he couldn't farm it anyway.
Yeah, sorry, for the quarter section that's the subject of the application, yes. The other ones, we haven't assessed that because it's not part of the application. So if we can jump back to the,
So if you could just back up to there again, I have another question for that. So in the fix with the, let's zoom in on that bottom south there. So we can't deal with the one on the bottom, the border on the bottom. We can only deal with the one on the bottom, the top. So would we just take more land on the top to compensate for it and not change the bottom?
yeah, so especially here, we're heavily offset. So one of the ways I've tried to word the condition is if we were to go to the center line of that tan and we were to confirm in a field survey, what we'd hope we'd find is that we would have a 15-meter distance from that center line down to the existing road allowance boundary. So the first gray line below the tan that you can see on the screen may not be a perfect 15 meters. But if that applicant ever comes forward, we'll be doing kind of a similar exercise. And if we don't need the full 5 that we usually take, maybe it's only 2.
Okay.
That's how that would play out in the future. When we look at road dedication, we have, ordinarily, we do like to be fair and split it between the 2 properties where we can. In this circumstance, just for the vast majority of this, they own land on both sides. The legislation, we don't bump into a constraint until we hit the 30% of the total land involved in the application. That's the maximum amount of road dedication we can take, 30% of the entire quarter section. I don't say that to be alarming, but in an urban setting, that stuff adds up quickly when you're doing a multi-lot subdivision. Here we don't come anywhere close. So we're okay legislatively to take the amount of space. The landowner, we've had a chance to talk about this, and they appreciate that the county will pay the cost for the survey work. And that by our other policies is also if we have to move good fences out of the way, we'll look after that as well. So that's something that Public Works operations will look after later on in the spring. I'm not sure how much fence line we actually have to worry about.
Would we have to do any fencing if the road is sitting where it's sitting, as long as we have the right of way, there would really be no requirement to do fencing with it?
There's a possibility of that. So for instance, can you go back up to the field?
We're not gonna do construction with it.
Yeah, it's, and it's whether or not we need any shaping of ditching. So we could see where that cultivated field is. Even if they're coming over the line for a while, that may be a good example where we don't bother putting in a fence and just kind of just manage it. It becomes an issue the day that we go out and we need to reshape and actually install a ditch. Yeah. So there's a couple ways, and there may be another section where we actually do have to put a fence back in on the alignment. I just don't know exactly where those are for today's discussion.
Part of that conversation though too with accessing this land is to not formally, it's that we have the right to the land, but the farmer can still use it correctly.
That's what that's the road acquisition agreements do that.
Yeah.
When we do a road plan, that's when it actually has formally transferred over to the counties.
Okay.
And so
But still, as long as we have a survey plan that tells them if they replace the fence, this is where it goes. Or, but if they're farming now, I think that kind of keeps the insult from the injury when they have to sign that over in their subdivision.
It is, yeah. Our intention, as we talked about it, administration, is just, until the time that we need it, you just keep farming the ditch.
Just use it as is, but this is what we have. Yeah. I think from a cooperation base, go forward. If the one friend tells somebody else, the next guy to over, it's as long as the road stays the way it is, nothing really changes. But if it has to change, well, then we.
This is just planning into the future, I think. It's good planning so that we have it when we do. Unfortunately, the model council has seen where we have done a road plan in some areas and then come back and wait a minute, that wasn't ever registered or whatever. I think we're just dotting the I's and crossing the T's on this one. So I'm with you on this one. Go ahead, Mr. Grover.
I think we already registered most of those that we went through that once already, right? This year, where that's at, why wouldn't you, if they're gonna give you $1,000 an acre and wanna make a little bit bigger area to live in the country, I can't see a problem with it. You're not taking number 1 farmland out of that thing, and you're not gonna be building a shopping mall up there. So.
No, I don't think that's not what we're discussing right now. Yeah.
Process.
What? Bill, just
For a second, I'll hold that motion and we're just going to let them finish their presentation. Go ahead.
I've got a question, just on the other right of ways, or some of these that we forgave not forgave, but gave up road plans where they had forced roadways through.
Yeah.
This one here, these are still all county road plans.
Yeah, I think we find that scenario. Can we go a little bit up to the very northwest corner, Andrew, in this quarter section? I'm not sure if we find, maybe it's the neighbor's quarter. So can you zoom in a little bit more so we can all see? Okay, so this may be, I think, the scenario you're talking about where here the road plan went up. It's not, again, it's not in the subject quarter section we're dealing with, but in the neighbor to the north, it went up, and we were supposed to have gone on around the north and east side of that little wetland. Instead, we went the other side. So that's an area where if that person was in front of us, we'd probably be facing that. Unfortunately, that's a long, cumbersome process because we have to go through the formal road closure process, which is, best case 5 to a 9 month period just to go through the motions. So in this particular application, I haven't found any incidents where we would have to do that kind of trade back. Maybe, Mr. Chair, just to wrap up the presentation, if we can go to the conditions, which are on page 13 of the PDF. So they're the biggest, the most exciting ones. We do have a little bit of brushing from their access, and that's not unusual. So a little bit of cleanup, but easily tackled by our crews when the time comes. Conditions number 5 and 6 are the ones that are very unique for this application, and I wrote them separately so we have two different, because we have two different road allowances, so it gets a little cumbersome. So the first one deals with the long stretch of road running generally north-south. And the idea is that the surveyor would find the center line and make sure we have 15 meters either side. In some cases, they may be adding like a full 15 on one side. In other cases, it may not be adding anything, depending on what they find in the field. And then the number 6 is the same. And the only added twist on this one is when you get to the two ends that we're looking at, you have to follow a curve. So that's why I can't really be more specific about how to do that arc. So that's why they're worded that way, is that the surveyor would find the center line and do that offset, and then we would actually have a drawing, and that would go to the totals. That concludes my presentation, Mr. Chair.
Okay. I just have one question. Andrew, can you go back to the where we show the projected new lot with the pink around it? Yeah, right there. Now, is there any concern that the land to the south and west there becomes landlocked? Because, I mean, right now it shows that that's all nice and green in there, but I am thinking that eventually we will get water again, God willing, and that will fill up with water. So does that landlock that little piece to the south? Yeah, right there, that piece. Because that slough typically, you can see where it kind of goes over the edge, where you see the gray part. It's well into those bushes on many of the occasions that I've been up there anyways.
So, Mr. Chair, a couple things. Number one, we did have that chat with the applicant, and he knows when he goes for a walk with the surveyor to find that line, he was purposely trying to find at least one track for a tractor, space for a tractor, one track road to go between the edge of the wetland and the trees. The other thing to bear in mind is that our photo that we're seeing is from our last air photo around May of 2021.
Yeah, summer of 21.
So that wetland's probably looking healthier in that photo than if it wasn't covered in snow, than it did this past summer. And so it's not to say that it couldn't absorb more water than what it had in May of 2021, but it's not quite like the ones that how drawn down they are like today.
So, and that's my only concern, is I don't want to hold them hostage. And if it's a case that pink line to the southeast needs to move a little wider, I don't want to stop this applicant from going forward because of.
We routinely talk to the applicants that, even our drawing, it's not the same accuracy as a surveyor, and that's their opportunity to do the walk around. It's also why when we do calculations off this drawing to say the rural development fund amount is this, if your surveyor drawing comes back, I end up redoing those calculations based on the more accurate information now available to me.
So that goes to my question, why wouldn't we have moved that pink line to around the bush and it becomes just all part of it? That's all.
At this stage, it's kind of where we are.
Okay, fair enough. That's fair enough. That's where I'm at. Go ahead, Mr. Stevens.
Just looking at the approach and the access, based on the angle that the road's heading, so the approach isn't at 90 degrees, we're confident that brushing will clear up that sight line without taking out all the shelter belt that I assume the landowner would like to keep some of that in his yard. And just looking at the angle, it will be quite substantial.
Yeah. So basically to achieve, it's 160 meters, and it's not necessarily that they have to remove all of it. I didn't go on the site visit for this one myself. Actually, I'm not sure if our photos help us understand the nature of that brush. Could be trimming of limbs below the 15-foot level to achieve that visible sight distance. So it doesn't always mean that we have to shade down every single tree. Sometimes it could be we're trimming up the lower branches. What we're really after is we don't want too much overgrown in the ditches, but the site visibility is the key issue.
Okay, I just want to make sure that that was clearly communicated with the applicant. I don't want them caught off guard when.
So, Mr. Chair, in all cases, the applicants do have a chance to have the full report that MPC has after the agenda's been made public. So.
Okay. Any other questions and concerns? We do have a motion on the table presented by Mr. Grover. Any questions now that we've talked this through? We're satisfied and happy. Then I am going to call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried. Okay. Excellent. Reports 8.1. Rich, get to do this. Starting a new year, you get to do everything, Greg.
Yeah, I did ask beforehand. I did say I would cover it. So Rich, well, I will offer a chance for him to interject after we've had a chance to go over it. So I do want to thank Rich and Carly for pulling this together. So this is kind of as you know, we've been trying different ways of looking at the data and reporting it back to you as a group. And trying to give a summary in this report of how 2024 went. So compared to 2023, we had less development permit applications numerically coming through. Overall residential value kind of in the $10 million mark. Industrial value almost a little bit higher, coming in we're pretty close to that $10 million mark. Although I do want to speak a little bit more. It's important to note that the sheer volume of reports of applications doesn't indicate the complexity of the individual applications. So when you see 130 in the last year and 99 this year, some of them may or have been more complex or may have been simple. So you never know. And that's also important not to read too much into that in terms of what that's a reflection of what's happening in our overall economy. So the values are a little bit of caution on that as well. The applicants give us their best guess. And sometimes we don't get the data from them because they're doing yard improvements. It's hard to put an actual value to that. So there's a bit of a grain of salt that goes with that. And in the report, we're also promising to do that kind of analysis to see how what we're being told matches up to what we get at the end in terms of assessment growth. So for 2024, we're still going to be waiting into it next year to be able to do that. For development permits that were approved in 2023, give them a chance to build in 2024. They should now be hitting the assessment rules in 2025. So now it's an opportunity for us to go back on a kind of a random sample selection basis and say, okay, can we get a sense of our level of accuracy and what's happening here? So on that note, I want to come back to the nearly $11 million in industrial value that you see in the report. One application alone, which was the Fire Tech Data Processing Center, represents $5 million of that amount. So these things do have to be taken a little bit of a grain of salt in that respect. Nonetheless, it gives you a picture of what level of investment activity that could be coming our way to our community. And the two tables give you a bit of a breakdown. You can see the shift from 2024, where again, based on the value of the developments, the industrial share is dramatically bigger, that light green component of the pie compared to the previous year, which is dominated by the very large Pac-Man type figure of blue residential values. Still is the dominant, both in terms of number of files and value coming through the department at this point in time. Scroll on a little bit more. The next section of the report, we go down to, should be on subdivision, I think. Oh, sorry, my mistake, land use bylaw amendments. So this is new information that we try to track, which that one. So kind of similar numbers from last year to this year in terms of how many land use bylaw amendment applications we had. And this is one of the statistics that we have to report to municipal affairs in our annual report that's due at the end of February. So we decided to put it in the report here. Some of those are driven by applicants. Either they want us to consider something different for their property, or due to one of our policies to have their subdivision processed or have their development permit processed, they have to formally get an amendment. And also included in that number are the ones that administration identifies and brings forward to the council for amendments. So, for example, in 2024, the creation of the direct control districts for the gravel pits, and then subsequent rezoning is 2 of the bylaw amendments out of the 7 that we had for 2024. So we'll start having a bit more of that information available. We scroll forward again on the subdivision, should be the next page or topic area coming up, is where we stand as at the end of 2024. We had 17 subdivision applications. That's up from the 12 we had in 2023. Our timeline is for processing is a little bit, it's respectable. It's just a little, by the end of the year, it's a little slower than what it's looking at mid-year, but it's still only about 36 days to go from your application is complete, you processed it, to getting to the point where MPC has made a decision. The legislation is 60 days. We also have to report that number to municipal affairs, but it's certainly a respectable number in terms of the processing. I should point out, what we didn't have in the report was, having crunched the data, our average processing time for development permits is around 20 days once we have all completed application. There are some outliers. So there's some ones that go to 118 days. And that's largely driven by the applicant not giving us information to be able to move on to the next step, and opting not for us just to trash your application and kind of push it to the side of the desk until they get us the information. Unfortunately, it does have, kind of drags up our stats. But again, 20 compared to the 2 days compared to the 40 days the legislation allows us is a very respectable performance.
You put that into residential and industrial.
We'd have to go back and crunch the numbers.
Yeah, no, but I mean, I'd be interested to know that, because for the most part, those residentials, I would think may be less than that. I think we do a great job.
There are a couple where I probably have to critique our assessment. We don't get to record it to 0 in the data in one spot. That's just not possible. The lowest is 1 day. But we do have a couple ones, where if you're in the same day, you got a lucky bounce, the development officer's got the time, and it's a straightforward, simple allocation, and the paperwork's going out next day too. So back to the subdivision, in terms of a little bit of the information from of what the nature of the applications were, the vast majority, 9 of the 17 were still, not the vast, I guess the majority, were still our typical farmstead removals, much like the application that we dealt with before. Trends last year, we had their first kind of 3 applications that involved large agricultural parcels. And those parcel sizes are really dragging up our average. So again, read the average size going up from 8.80 acres average in June to now 18 acres. There's some kind of it's like averaging Wayne Gretzky salary against every other defenseman in the NHL. Someone's salary skews and drags up the others. So you see a little bit of that happening in the numbers. So there's nothing that's really shocking in that area. Probably what to read into this, I would say, when you compare that 8.8 acre average to what our NDP says about our preference being 5. But it seems to be open discharges are what quickly draws us past that 5 acres just about every single time. So I think that's it for that component. Then the table, of course, you can take a look at some of the subdivisions. The good number of the ones that were approved in this year have already made it through to land titles. There are a number that landowners still within their 1 year of initial approval. So those are the ones that are labeled as tentative approval as opposed to endorsed. Endorsed means that we've done all of our part. It's all in the hands of the landowner. And actually, I should say, even after that, landowners can still choose not to take it on the land titles. Even after, so we kind of trust that they will eventually, if they've chosen to go through that level of effort. Some landowners may change their mind on the applications, and we did see one of those in this current year, where Mr. Unner's application, he started with one size and he wanted a different outcome, so he ended up doing another process. So that first application will never progress to land titles. Others are just, I had one applicant call me to say now that they've had some chance to do some research on what it costs to get new service connections, they're not likely to proceed. And sometimes that just happens. Others may have to, as the time ticks by, get an extension if they haven't brought the materials into endorsement. So, but all told, there's nothing in the tables and the data to be alarmed in that respect. So I'm not sure if I'll ask Rich if I glossed over any highlights you wanted to flag before I conclude.
No, I think the only table that we didn't discuss was there was a breakdown of the different zoning districts and the types of development. I don't know if you want to go over that at all.
Agricultural district representing the vast majority of county, easily takes in 50% of the permits. Last year and this year are located in that one agricultural district, so
But it stays the same, both.
it's pretty
And
comparable.
23 and 24 are pretty close to the same. It's nothing is significant change there.
The second and third highest areas are, both.
Targeted at the multi-lot subdivisions up around the lake area, so the far right-hand side of that column, where that table's from.
Any questions, concerns, any thoughts? Mr. Grover?
I got one, roll it back a bit to the Tim Mundra subdivision. I thought that we put that to 20-some acres on 11.
Chairman, we did, he came in as a separate application, so about halfway down the table, application number 10, you'll see Tim Hunter again.
Okay, that's where it's at. Okay, I was up to 20, I thought it was returned, went in, I seen it there, and I thought,
Yeah, no, Craig had spoke to that had changed. That was what he was talking
yeah, we
about.
changed it, put the sewer in there, I guess.
So,
Thank you.
I think this is very imperative going forward that, job well done. And I think it's important to go forward with these stats because both the provincial and federal government are making it a priority for, it seems to be not so much in rural Alberta, but definitely in the urban areas, how quickly you can endorse projects and how quickly you turn around. And you see that on a regular basis. Anytime they talk about housing and they talk about permits, you need to get these permits done on a timely fashion. And I just, you guys are doing phenomenal work. And I mean, lots of people, it's always those outliers that complain about it, but the guy that got turned around in a day isn't screaming on Facebook saying how great we are. But the guy that's at 118 days has definitely had some issues. So I get it. I don't think those individuals have, they have legitimate issues, but it's how they put them out there for sure. So yeah, I think it's important that we keep up with this. It's great information. Mr. Stover.
Just one question on the development permit applications at the start there. There were 73 applications processed and in those included were RVs as dwellings. How many of those applications would have been RVs as dwellings? Would you estimate?
I would say, pick a number, we're gonna believe you.
At least 25.
And is that where they need that permit, even just sort of to camp for the summer on a lot?
No,
That's a difference.
It's the time limited ones. Generally, I think most of them are 2-year. One of the multi-lot subdivisions does give them for.
Okay, I'm clear on that now.
I actually have detailed stats on the RV tags if we'd like them. We do have time before my scheduled council meeting, not that I'm looking to fill space. Yeah, on the temporary ones, and it does include some of the long-term ones as well, so.
Just so you know, we do have some in-camera session here yet today. But I'll let you go ahead, Ed.
Robin did just ask for this here the other day and I had put it together, so. For short term, so our system does track those RVs as dwellings, just so that when our enforcement's up there, they can see in the same system any trailer that belongs. But for the short term ones, we had 108 tags issued. The majority of them were actually issued for Buffalo Sands, with Roshan Sands Heights being a close second. The average length of time they were for was about 12 days. With the vast majority being the full 21-day maximum, and then followed up by second place for duration was 4 days. So your 4-day weekend ones were quite common as well. Yes, absolutely. This includes repeat customers. This is every permit that's issued. 4 were issued for properties not within a subdivision, because I know that somebody's waiting to ask that question.
I wasn't gonna recognize it.
I was not.
Oh, thank you. I can read that little line of yours.
And our busiest day for permitted RVs was the Sunday of the August long weekend at 20 active short-term tags simultaneously.
I think for the most part, it's working. It seems to be. I don't think feedback's been good. I think we do a good job of issuing the permits. I know there's a certain board member that has a different opinion than me, but that's still to be discussed on a regular basis. So. We're trying. I don't know. It's one of those ones. How do you find a better solution? Yeah. Go ahead.
So I think I have at least 2 notes for the LUB review on this particular topic. So eventually we'll get back to that point.
Okay. Any other questions, concerns?
Just one quick one. In lieu of the discussion on our goal of keeping acreage is ideally at 5 acres, and then with the traditionally, they're coming out more of an average of 8 to handle sewers and stuff. Is that something that we would adjust down the road, you think, or?
Without maybe a little bit of foreshadowing or teaser, I guess. I will point out that the MDP review is still in progress and the committee gets to weigh in on it. But I think that's one of the options that we're probably going to have to look at, especially when we look at the issue of, if I recall, trying to make the MDP more subdivision friendly. And if that is the most common and most used way of providing reasonable, affordable wastewater treatment, then that's going to put some strain on that 5-acre target. I'm not sure if just jumping to 10 or 8, which is kind of the minimum area you have to be to satisfy this. If that perfect ring, if you do open discharges right in the middle of the new parcel and you draw the 90 meters all the way around, you're at 8, but you don't have a lot of space where to put your house as a result of that. So does it have to be looked at? Long answer. Does it have to be looked at? I think yes. Where are we going to land? I don't know at this point.
Okay, no, that's good. And wanted to add that does also tie back into your strategic plan that did advocate quite heavily for regulatory changes for a better return to rural, so that through that MDP review will be council's opportunity to action that.
What are you gonna talk about?
I'll recognize you, board member Stevens.
After 3.5 years, I should hope you recognize me. I was just going to say, when we're talking about timelines and the MDP LUB update, if we want to shorten those timeframes anymore, it's important that we cognizantly think about discretionary powers versus set rules, because that is one. When our planning staff talk about this 1-day turnaround on a few instances, it's because complies with all the rules, confirm setbacks, and it's a pretty quick and easy process. But as soon as it's discretionary, then it's MPC date that dictates a lot of the schedules. So
Yeah, no, we've definitely had that discussion at at the review panel. And that review panel brought up the fact that there are a number of counties that don't even have an MPC. All power is given over to the development officer, and the rules are set by council. And then so that is a fundamental discussion, I think, that we will be having of how that goes forward.
it's a very long way of saying our staff are quick, we are slow.
Yeah, no, exactly, 100%.
Yeah, I think the conversation probably is going to be more of a council organizational discussion on how to structure, but there's also some mid-ground on how to solve this. There's things that we've seen multiple times that we're more comfortable with. It may be time to move them from the discretionary use part of the list to the permitted use list, which in our system currently automatically defaults. The other split is right now our bylaw says anything that's discretionary comes to municipal planning commission. Anything's permitted goes to the development officer unless the development officer wants to send it to the municipal planning commission. You can split the categories, the discretionary uses, still between the development officer and the MPC if the bylaw wants to be structured that way. So there's probably ways that definitely will be taken a look at how it makes sense for us.
Okay, seeing no other questions or concerns. Oh, one more.
No, I was going to move the development officer's
Officer's report. You're in reviewed. You're good? Yeah. All those in favor? Mr. Grover?
Oh, you couldn't see my other hand. All right. I know. Oh, yeah.
No, I saw you holding both hands on the table, but that's good. We're good. Okay.
Other one was up here, I guess, waving at you. Hey, how you doing there, James?
Okay, new business, we have none. Old business, we have none. We have a small in-camera session. Mr. Paul McKay will take us in camera at what time?
1:42 PM.
1:42. All those in favor going in camera?
He did have his hand up.
Gentlemen, Wednesday, February 26th, mark your
Get a
calendar.
vote so that you're actually out of camera.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
What's happening on the grade.
You good? Okay, next meeting, February 26th, we're all good to go. Nothing that's gonna bring us anything different. Are we having an ag service board meeting in the morning of the February the 26th? So that'll be good. I just was talking to Craig, if we do this again, maybe we should go till 1:30 just to give staff a little bit of a stress relief instead of being right after lunch. So we'll make that as a note going into any ones that we have an
Just imagine
individual.
what your agenda looks like though too. And
Yeah.
as far as staff goes, if Craig is a very forgiving supervisor, he'd tell his staff to go
Yeah, I know, it's Michelle that we're thinking
20
about,
minutes early and
and he doesn't have control over everything. Andrew, we're thinking about those other ones. It's up to MPC, we work 24/7.
I'd like to see us stay at 1 o'clock. But
We'll deal with that. There you go. Okay, all those in favor, oh, I need somebody to give me a motion.
Adjourn.
Adjourn. All those in favor?